Bonjour à tous, merci d'être venus à cette conférence. Nous allons démarrer cette intervention qui va tourner effectivement autour d'un rétex suite à une crise cyber et des préparations phase avant à ces rétex. Alors sans vouloir défoncer de porte ouverte, je pense que tous autant que nous sommes dans cette salle, nous avons tous conscience, en tous les cas, de l'explosion des crises cyber que nous avons pu voir ces derniers temps. Niveau de crise cyber qui, au demeurant, reste à un niveau relativement élevé actuellement. Chez Orange Cyberdefense, on accompagne régulièrement des entreprises, des organisations pour faire face à ces crises cyber. Et aujourd'hui, on constate qu'on est globalement sur 1 à 2 crises par semaine en moyenne.
1 or 2 crises per week on average. These crises can be relatively simple, but some other crises can wreak total havoc in the IT system. So what are the outcomes for these corporations? How can a corporation address such a threat? How can an entity prepare itself for a cyber attack, and how can it leverage this cyber attack? How can it organize its own feedback in order to thwart such menaces in the future? So in order to answer these questions, we have Sacha HILIC, who works for Pierre Fabre, and he is the CIO, and he will recount the cyber attack they suffered a while ago. We also have David Bigot, who works for Orange Cyberdefense. He will address a number of crises on which he has acted. One cannot address crises without talking about preparation for crises. And to that end, we have Dominique Vaudoiset, main consultant at Orange Cyberdefense. He will talk about crisis management plans and defense plans. He will look at how we can implement these plans in order to prepare ourselves as best as possible. I'm about to ask my first question. Sacha, could you talk about the Pierre Fabre laboratories? Every company has its own environment, its own history. Pierre Fabre's history dates back to the 60s. It was a pharmaceutical company created in Castres by Pierre Fabre in the department of Tarn. Pierre Fabre gifted his company to his employees, and it became a public service foundation, and the employees of Pierre Fabre are involved in crisis management and in the day-to-day management of the company. We are the second independent lab in France. We are oncology leaders. This is crucial. The crisis impacted all our production and distribution systems. If you are unable to distribute oncological products, that can be a disaster. We also a global leader in terms of cosmetics with the brand Aven. We're also one of the biggest employers in our region. We also have Airbus and we have Pierre Fabre. So, what's the rationale behind the existence of Pierre Fabre? Every time we help out someone, we improve the world. So we were attacked. It was a difficult experience. Being unable to deliver for our patients and our consumers, that was a very serious issue for us. And there's a final item I'd like to mention. We have 13,000 employees across the world. We are present in 145 countries. We have 30 subsidiaries, and we manufacture in France, and all our production and R&D divisions are in France. We are also very close to the business and general direction divisions, and this, I believe, is absolutely crucial. We are a global company with a very tight-knit governance, and we are really working closely together. Okay. So we decided to set up a crisis cell. So we have a global crisis unit for this. So there's no disruption in terms of technology, of services. We provide networks, infrastructures to the end user, to support the end user, and I believe this is absolutely crucial. This happens in France, but this also happens at the international level. When we seek to respond to IT crisis, it's essential to have such a global footprint. As for my job as a CIO, well, I want to stress the importance of having local partners. Partners that are aware of cyber issues. Of course, I'd like to mention a few because they stood at our side during the crisis. So we had Thales and Consorente. But for the NSOC side, it was the IMS network. We were glad to have them at our side, and we'll talk about OCD's intervention further down the line. So the crisis hit on the 30th of March. What happened? How did you uncover the crisis? Was it a gradual attack or was it a sudden assault? No, it was a sudden assault. It was a phishing. Even if we carry out training and awareness raising on phishing, as you have to do, you have to hammer home the point, and this is what we'll carry on doing. But this is a sudden attack, and so we were warned by the production systems at 4 a.m., whether they be network systems or infrastructure systems at the global scale. All hands were on deck, management too, and we were able to make decisions in the 15 or 20 minutes that followed the detection of the attack. What did we do? We shut down the group, all IT systems, the whole company. We shut down the networks. Internet network, external network, because we did not want to impact our partners. We also turned off the server. So all our IT systems were in the dark. I think now I can tell you that we were able to still communicate, and this allowed us to manage the crisis. David, if we draw a parallel, when the OCD teams act, what happens? Can we draw a lesson from this? Or is every intervention very specific? Or indeed, we often come to the battlefield after the damage has been done and everything has been encrypted and nothing works anymore. It's as if we were looking at an empty shell of an IT system. No device operates, everything is encrypted, and it's the availability teams that acknowledge that the whole IT system is in tatters. So it's very uncommon to have weak signals such as bandwidth saturation, files that are saturated. We don't often have these signals. Sometimes the cyber attacker makes mistakes, but we're not always aware of these first signals that could allow us to identify the presence of an attacker in the network. And often when we're called, well, the deed has already been done. So what's the first decision? What's the first measure you take? How do you reorganize yourself? How do you adapt, and how do you preserve your agility in the face of this attack? So before I pick up on these first decisions, I'd like to talk about how the company believes it should act in the face of cybercriminality. So we also collaborated with some of our local partners who had been attacked with the CODI. We were able to organize an anticipation session. So these sessions allowed us to promptly respond and shut down the information system. Without prior validation, I did not have to call the managing director to shut down the system. Naturally, the managing director was warned of such a shutdown, but I was able to do it. So the cyber threats are one of the major risks of the group, and we were aware of this before the attack in March. So the role of the CISO was very clear, and the teams were able to respond promptly. How do we articulate our measures? Well, we're quite clear on how responsibilities and functions are broken down. We have a crisis unit, and from an operational standpoint, this did not pose any issues. We also have a group crisis unit that was set up in the wake of the attack. But what's important here is that despite us having local partners that were able to respond to the incident, such as Thales, I believe that it was crucial for us to have a partner that was outside of our ecosystem. And I believe that we exchanged with OCD on March 31st during the afternoon, and we made the decision to work with OCD in the wake of that meeting during the evening. And OCD was our primary partner in terms of responding to this incident, and I'd like to thank them warmly. Pierre Fabre Laboratories is a big corporation. David, can you tell us if the size of the corporation impacts the way you respond to crises? Indeed, in such a case, we work on business continuity, process formalization. We look at different levels. When we're on the phone with the client and the client just recounts the attack, where we're trying to look at the DAF, and we're trying to address the different issues that arise and say that we could have had exfiltration. And a number of medium-sized companies are not ready to rise up to such threats. Indeed, the measures can be complex. You have to be very pedagogical. Companies often think that they'll be quick on their feet again, but this is when we come in and say that it will be a long and arduous process, and that we won't be able to relaunch the company in the weeks to come. Sacha, I have a question for you. So we're still looking at how the attack is unfolding. You're trying to reorganize and draw the conclusions. Are you already thinking about how you're going to rebuild, how you're going to ensure the safety of your IT systems? What was your thought process when you were thinking about rebuilding? I'd like to pick up on what David has said. I'd like to thank all the personnel in the company, the business division, and the support. They were all extremely helpful. We had the whole company standing by our side. We had no nefarious pressure being exerted on us. Of course, we had to deliver for our patients, our customers, our collaborators. This was important for us. However, this act of rebuilding, well, we were aware that it was going to be a lengthy process, and management supported us and did not exert negative pressure on us. We have crisis management plans, but we're not necessarily ready to face such an attack. Day one is about what we're going to do, what strategy we're going to adopt. We had many discussions with OCD. We talked with the insurers, and they approved of the strategy we adopted. So we did not simply cleanse our IT system, we rebuilt it in its entirety. Imagine what that entails. Pierre Fabre is more than 300 applications. It's a complex IT systems with ERPs, a lot of software. This was a very important decision to make. What we wanted to do was not to favor speed, but rather to favor safety. Safety for the group. And I'd like to give you a few elements that we rebuilt. So the directory, the networks, the parallel networks that we rebuilt, but also every infrastructure items that we called the zero base. But we were also able to look at the whole value creation chain from sourcing, conception and development, customer service, etc., etc. So we involved the businesses in order to relaunch the company in the best way possible. So yes, different business leaders were involved for every decision. They were present in all major meetings. Internally, this is how we acted. We had a stream that was called the business app that was about rebuilding the company. We also had a governance stream, a crisis management stream with the crisis unit in which we involve the human resource department and business leaders. So we had an infrastructure stream, a restoration stream, because we had to restore everything, even if environments weren't encrypted or damaged. We restored them. We had a user stream. We had also a business app stream. And within this stream, we rebuilt every application. And at every step, we had goes or no-goes given by the business leaders. So the whole company was on deck, and this was not an easy task. There was a lot to manage. All in all, I believe things went well, and all the different functions were at our side to face the issues and also to make the decisions. You said that you built up a parallel network. How did we set up our new IT system? So we established a parallel network that we called the trust zone. We had experts that had to use computers with improve safety protocols, and our experts were able to build back every server with the help of the safe backups of the previous day. And gradually we were able to put together all the servers. Imagine, we're not in a SaaS solution, so we have 300 applications multiplied by our number of servers. So this was a lot of work. Then you also have to access these apps, and this was highly complicated. So what we did is to leave everyone at home. Nobody came on the premises. And we also strengthened the safety protocols for company computers. We had to use a VPN to access the systems, and then we had to cleanse the LANs, disconnect all the automats, those we had in R&D and on the industry. So then we opened the one, and we opened internet. And we applied more stringent regulations, including for our flux matrix, and we applied north-south segmentation. What did you do with the safe data? Was the data corrupted? So 0.5% of our safe data was affected on non-critical environments. So I believe that I did not mention we were affected on the Windows side, not our other technologies. We could have relaunched our S/4HANA ERP quite rapidly, but that's not what we did. We did a backup, and we implemented the EDR. We did sanity checks, and when everything was good to go, we went ahead. So we rebuilt the whole IT system. We often do cutovers, implement ERPs. We're aware that a cutover can take 2 days. But rebuilding a technical base from scratch, we had never done it. Well, we had done it on an individual basis, but not on that scale. So this was a cause of stress and anxiety. And you'll see that we were able to rapidly rebuild this technical base in 7 days. And this was a big win. And this also fostered trust in the crisis management team. And then we were able, thanks to the trust, to rapidly go ahead. David, we're talking about a rebuilding, reconstruction. Is that similar to the other interventions that you had to do? Well, that depends. When the client has no backup, then you have no server and you don't even have the data. You don't know what you have to restore. So you're working with a brand new IT system. So it really depends on the situation. When you don't have any backup data, then you have a clean sheet, and you're going to think about how you're going to rebuild the IT system. It really depends if you have some backup data or not. So strategy will be evolutive, but the aim is often to get back on track as fast as possible, and maybe not to go too fast. You have to rebuild trust. You have to have a sound technical base in order to avoid any further issues. You must not have any remaining backdoors that the attacker could assault, because these cyber criminals are getting increasingly better identifying these, and even after being restored, you have to really ensure that the attacker cannot come back. So how can you foster trust among your users? Well, we communicated with them. We have a management who talked to everyone, and we talked about how they have to work with the computers. We adopted a sanity check procedure that was validated by Orange Cyberdefense. We resetted all passwords. We distributed antiviruses, and we absolutely did something crucial. It was to implement the EDR. I'm not going to give the name of it. But we also adopted a new VPN, a new version of the VPN. And so we carried out a check of all these items. And if all systems were go, we allowed our collaborators to penetrate our IT system. But that was a lengthy process, and not everybody came back at the same time. But I believe they were understanding of the situation and they collaborated. And we did everything we could to speed up the process. Today at Pierre Fabre, we do not have a single server or a single workstation that does not have an EDR. So I believe this is how we were able to regain trust for our users. How were your activities impacted? You said earlier on that every function, every business leader was involved in the crisis response. How were these activities affected? How did you manage the rebuilding phase?
C'est un mars, blackout total, seuls les systèmes.
1st of March, there was a total blackout, and there was the communication systems, some offline solutions were up. All the company's processes were affected. We have PCAs and PRAs, and one of the first things to do is to distribute our oncological products manually, but that can only take, that can only last for 15 days because we've less visibility on stock management and on production when we deliver manually. So what we asked the upper management to do is to give us a list of priorities, and I'll be very clear. After 7 days, the infrastructure was up and running. We had users come in. After a fortnight, 15 days, we had French international dermocosmetic and international products up. After 3 weeks, we had the URPs, a process outside of the factories were up and running in France and internationally. After 4 weeks, we started opening up factories with a ramp up, because you can imagine in a factory, you have RSSI, IoTs, etc. So you have to ramp things up. And the first factories started producing a month after the blackout. And one factory takes about a month to be up and running again. After 6 weeks, we thought about the R&D. So can you imagine you telling a part of the company they're not a priority? Thank God the upper management was backing us up. And after 8 weeks, we were functional again, with, of course, some incidents pertaining to the cyber crisis. But after 8 weeks, by and large, the company had full disposal of all its tools. A lot of financial resources went into this, and other resources. You have the CIO office. We had former employers come in as well. We asked providers to be scalable. So if you have medium-sized companies, that might be difficult. And then we had the different positions, occupations that can go up to 1,000 people in this type of crisis situation. And we also drew upon other resources. What about your activity continuity plan or your recovery plan? Are companies prepared for it? Are they doing the necessary testing, and are their plans fine-tuned and tweaked to the cyber menace? Well, no. When we come in, they will tell us that they have provided for possible attacks, destruction, but the problem is we're not in that situation. These rescue environments are in the active directory, and when the attacker is going to encode, they're going to encode the rescue environment. So companies think they're going to leave that environment very speedily, but that environment remains unavailable, and that's the same when it with respects to backups that are online. We have seen during forensic analyses is that the attacker is going to explicitly target the backup environments. So always have an offline backup at the ready. So several months have gone by, Sacha, since this attack. What is the lie of the land now? Are you back up? Are there things to be done? How can you capitalize on the crisis that you've just undergone? What is your approach? Well, from the business point of view, we have caught up, and thank you to our employers in production and distribution for that. They have done some sterling work over the course of the summer in particular. We no longer have any backlogs, or very few backlogs, and that's very important when it comes to the IT system. The level of incidents is equivalent to what it was before. One thing that's important to note is that an information system is prod and outside of prod as well for maintenance and projects. We've now finalizing the environments, so we're 5 to 6 months behind. They'll be up and running by the end of September. So that is the state of play at present. Now it's time to analyze things, to understand things, to craft action plans. We, of course, have had an impact on, this has had an impact on our infrastructure and our human resources. So we're listening to feedback within the CIO's department, but also listening to feedback within the group. We have learned an awful lot during this crisis. And we had, in 2018, we had drawn up a plan, ongoing projects as well. And of course, this has meant that we have had to reorder our priorities, and I'd like to share 3 of them with you. First one is protect. To protect, because at Pierre Fabre, we thought that protecting our perimeter was the most important thing. But then we realized that one can enter into the information system. What's important to us right now is to be able to segment. We had started segmenting, not sufficiently though, and we hope that we can be segmented as fast as possible. And so a VLAN per application. I'm simplifying things, but that's it's a difficult thing to run, but that is a secure thing to do with respect to stopping the spread of the virus. So that's what we're going to be setting up. Secondly, what's important is detection. We weren't armed sufficiently for detection. On the 23rd, the attacker entered and acted on the 31st, so had quite a bit of time to do things in our information system. We had a plan to increase detection, but it wasn't enough. We reinforced that detection during the cyber attack. We have a DR or NICS DR log that we set up. We secured our Active Directory with a solution that is here at the FIC. I'm not going to name it, but if you ask me, I shall. And then with a micro SOC as well. So that's the protection element. We're far better armed than we were 6 months ago. Third point is awareness raising. Habitually, we had monthly phishing campaigns with some good indicators, and our employers partook in these campaigns. They either were victims of phishing themselves or declared a phishing incident. We had some good indicators, but that wasn't enough. So after the attack, we decided upon two things. Firstly, is to have a very clear communication kit on phishing and a manager kit as well. We're going to ask each and every manager to raise the awareness of their employees, the full awareness thereof. And we also have university awareness raising trajectory that was our pathway that was meant to start. And it's not only on phishing, it's on the protection of personal data. And that's something that we wanted to set up and organize, and that is due to take place in the weeks to come. So the company is full aware of the fact that they had a cyber attack, and we have to keep on informing our employees and alerting them to the dangers. And so something has been set up in Pierre Fabre, but they want to capitalize on this cyber attack. Is that similar in your experience? So the stage of capitalizing on an experience and defining pathways, etc. We flank companies to really organize all of this very well and set out all the technological and process-based things that they're going to have to organize lest they fall victim to another attack. So now we're after the crisis, we're capitalizing on this experience, and prior to the next crisis, I'd like to talk to Dominique. What is the approach that one can adopt in order to prepare companies to be more resilient and better armed? Of course, there's no panacea, no miracle solution. Indeed, there isn't. As you have said, Mark, we have decided to offer all our clients to offer a cyber defense plan to our customers to help them to be better prepared for these situations, because despite all the detection and prevention tools we have to hand, we can face very complicated situations, as Sacha experienced in Pierre Fabre. So what we're proposing in this matter, the information systems have been designed to manage an incident and to continue production. Even in the face of a catastrophe, we have PSAs, etc. You already had quite a prevention culture in Pierre Fabre, but this notion of cyber defense, the environment has changed, and one is in a hostile environment. There is a level of hostility that was expressed in this attack, and the current information systems among our customers are not designed to face this level of context hostility. When we talk about a defense plan, what do we mean? We mentioned it earlier on. PRA, PCA, all these tools that are customarily offered are vulnerable to cyber attacks. They haven't been conceived, designed to take account of a cyber attack in their specifications. Well, a second room can be compromised at the same time as the main room, the rescue rooms, the ways to replicate data, the backups, etc. 25 years ago, one started implementing IT PRA plans, but why not work on good practices and measures to undertake in this cyber defense? The problem is we've lost faith in this information system. We know how to restore them. We have the backups, but we're going to restore a system that is vulnerable to attackers. To work on this defense plan means better detection and to better react in order to limit the impact on the different occupations. And we have to get organized to work on this subject. So how do you organize yourself to create this defense plan? We are convinced at OCD that we need to cover 3 slots in order to be at the ready. So we have the crisis management plan to give good governance to the right people, to have a good level of decision making that creates a favorable environment to crisis management. We need a defense plan on an operational level. What are the emergency measures? How am I going to conduct a sanity check? How am I going to restore my workstations, etc.? That's the defense plan with the different procedures and strategies that are built into it for anticipation, and the continuity of the different occupations without the mobilization of the different occupations. The CIO cannot do it alone. We have different layers coming in: governance, operational layers. We have to draw in the providers, cyber security experts, and then also the different occupations. We have to continue keeping them up and running during the blackout, the lockdown that we were alluding to earlier on. So it's not only at a cyber level, it also involves the company. And it's important to focus on the IT. So it's not really a cyber crisis, it's a business crisis. And it's going to affect everything when it comes to the different jobs. It's important for a company to have a defense plan that can be tested and updated regularly. And we had to rebuild an ERP in a different context, and we rebuilt it to subjected to regression tests, and this is something that requires upstream work in the same way as a PRA, and where we continue to prepare ourselves with rescue rooms. It is possible to work on these subjects while also working on the trust criterion. On the next slide, we look at the objectives of this defense plan. Of course, one of them is rapid reaction and detection, rapid reaction after detection with a number of measures that cutting down the networks, isolating sites, shutting down the internet. Have we talked about thought about a red button that would enable us to do this operation? You have done so to a large extent in Pierre Fabre. A lot of customers are very far from that red button situation, and this is what we face. And we have to look at the information system in an unconventional manner, in a context of a hostile crisis. And this throws a spanner in the works when it comes to the teams and throws up a number of questions. What's important as well, and this ties in with what Sacha and what Dominique has just said, it's important to uphold a sense of humor. You might have everything in place, whether tested or untested, but what is important is good humor. You are very right when you say raise the awareness of people, because that will put people in a better capacity to restart operations. We've come to the end of our session. Thank you very much for this very interesting information. If you have some questions, we will be able to answer them outside this auditorium because we've come to the end of our session. Thank you to all of you.